and riots. What might be coming next, and why is it all happening? Leo Knighton Tallarico, a longtime professional astrologer, will show us the planetary movements behind all this transformation. Is it possible extraterrestrial beings are a part of all this? Sit back and enjoy the ride as Leo takes us on a journey into the cosmos, showing us humanity's movement into the Age of Aquarius, which will unite us all, even in the face of our world's challenges. And now, Perspectives from the Sky with Leo.
Hi everyone, this is Leo Knighton Tallarico, and this is Perspectives from the Sky on this, what is today, on this 25th day of June, 2022. And Deborah Knighton Tallarico will be with us before too long, certainly the second half of this show. And also, Deborah and I have talked about, in part because we took our trip back to California, which I want to get into in a second, talk about this show becoming spiritual renaissance again. It was called Renaissance Radio Hour in Santa Fe when we were actually on public radio in Santa Fe for a few years. And I want to bring it back, and I think Deb does too, to Renaissance again, spiritual Renaissance, because that was our original vision and big reason why we came together in the first place. Love brought us together, but we knew that it was something greater than that because we both had so much that we wanted to do in the world to help the world going through what we knew was coming up in the not too distant future. So let me start by saying this week. It'll be an important week. I'll get into what all that is shortly, but there is a new moon on Tuesday, the 28th. And that new moon will be more powerful than usual because there'll be a close square to Jupiter in Aries, like almost exactly. The new moon's at 7+ degrees of Cancer. And Jupiter at that time will be at 7+ degrees of Aries. So that'll be a very important lunation, that new moon. And at the same day that happens, Neptune changes directions. Whenever a planet changes directions, its energy permeates our energy field. So that'll be an important day. And then 3 days later, Mars will square Pluto. Mars in Aries will square Pluto in Capricorn, and that'll be an important movement also. Since we've been gone, so much has happened in the world. So much has happened in our own lives too, which I'll get to in a second. But, between the gun issue, women's rights issue, important issues. There's also the January 6th panel that's going on to investigate what happened on January 6th during the insurrection at the Capitol. And I can tell you that all of that added together equals culture war, which we've been talking about, some water, which we've been talking about for a while, about the culture war in the United States, which actually is a culture war across the globe. Western civilization certainly too. So that culture war, you could see all the things that have happened since we last talked. January 6th inquiry, which is really getting to a place where Donald Trump is going to be found to be, guilty. And that's going to cause an uproar from his followers and people with like mind. And we got the protests now going across the country because Roe versus Wade was taken down, women's right to choose taken away. And not too many days before that, while we were still away, the gun issue. New York had a special gun law about concealed weapons that you needed to meet certain criteria before you could be given and had the ability to carry a concealed gun in New York City. And the Supreme Court struck that one down. So they took away individual city or state rights to say that this is the national law. But then when it came to Roe versus Wade, they did the opposite. They said, no, we're going to states' rights. Every state decides what they want to do with abortion. So that's kind of confusing. But nevertheless, that's where we are at. And let me say this about where we are at. And we knew this back in 2020 when the show started. You heard that little introduction. It was made in 2020 after the COVID virus started getting big. And I remember saying, and many people besides me saying, things are not going back to normal. The old normal's gone. It's out. And that's even more so today. Because it's not just the COVID. It's what's going on in the world out in Ukraine, for instance. It's the changing of the power structure in the world. It's what's going on in the United States, the things I just mentioned. The old normal is gone. It's important to get that inside yourself, inside all of us. And remember, with Neptune changing directions this week, we get an even a stronger voice for what I'm about to say. And that's the kingdom is within, as the Christ said. The real work that changes life is done inside ourselves, changing our consciousness, our viewpoints. That's what changes the world. Don't get me wrong. The protests going on across this country are the right thing to do now for people that believe that way. And writing, donating, writing what you believe, being with like-minded people to change the world out there, important. Of course it's important and it must be done. But the real deep work that changes things is internal. It's internal. It's inside you. It's inside me. Deb and I went back to the Bay Area. Our last show was, what was it, 4th or 5th of June? It was right after Mercury went back direct. Saturn was changing directions that day. And we mentioned how the eclipse season was done. And now, the last couple of weeks while we were away, things kind of settled in a way that we kind of say, well, here's where the world is. Here's where we each are in our own world. Now that eclipse season has ended and Mercury's going back direct. A lot of people still don't have clear direction for their lives, even though Mercury's been back direct long enough for that usually to give you some direction. A lot of people still don't have that. When we were away in California, that's where we went, Deb and I. We went to Northern California where we met. Deb and I met in Oakland, California. We were both living in the Bay Area back in those days, and that was 1992. We actually met in September, and I'm pretty sure it was September 26th, 1992. And we met in a metaphysical bookstore called The Moon and the Star. And yours truly was doing readings at The Moon and the Star. And I saw this beautiful woman come into the metaphysical bookstore. Wow, who is that? And the owner of the bookstore, Sherry, introduced her to me, Deborah to me. She did not get a reading from me that day, even though she was definitely into astrology and things like that. But we did meet and we did exchange phone numbers. And I kind of had a feeling this is something special, someone special. She told me she felt the same way. And then a few months later, I went back into the Moon and the Star and asked for Deborah's number again. Sherry gave it to me. We hooked up, and it didn't take very long. I moved in with her a couple months after we met that second time. And then we moved to Mill Valley from Oakland, beautiful Marin County, which we went to visit during our time off, which I'll tell you about also. And my son, Traylon, came with us. We moved to Mill Valley. And then with, financial condition of the Bay Area, so expensive, and just other issues too, we moved. We moved from Marin, Bay Area, to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And that's where we really put together what we had envisioned when we first met. We went on our honeymoon to Mount Shasta, California. Beautiful, magical, powerful, spiritually, Mount Shasta. And there we started talking about what we wanted to create together. Being the idealist we are, we called it love something. We wanted to make it. But it wasn't very long before it became clear that spiritual renaissance is what we wanted to create. And from there, we developed a publication, Spiritual Renaissance, which still exists now, but only on the internet. But we had it all over Santa Fe. And then we had the radio show, Renaissance Radio Hour, too. So Santa Fe was the place that we really manifested our Spiritual Renaissance Center. And then took it to Portland, Maine after that for many years. But now we are both feeling like we want Spiritual Renaissance to go to a whole other level as the world, we feel, needs it. Could use our service out there. Spiritually and psychological things are shifting and changing on a very deep level. Large part of it is we're in a new age. Remember, I let everybody know that in December, at the winter solstice of 2020, a new age began, Age of Aquarius. And though there's a lot of dark times have come since then, nevertheless, we are in that new age. We're in the challenge of bringing in that new age. Aquarius new age. The United States has a moon in Aquarius in its natal chart. That means its inner values, when it began, were very Aquarian. Of the people, by the people, for the people. All are equal. All people are equal. Diversity within unity. Liberation from kings, queens, dictators, autocrats. Power to the people. That is Renaissance, spiritual Renaissance, and Renaissance of our world structures and of our paradigm, most importantly. That's what's shifting and changing, is the paradigm. When you see things going on in the world, remember, it's an inner work needs to be done. You need your own. I need my own. We need our own transformation internally out of the old paradigm and the old world that we were programmed into. And that world wants to continue to exist. That programmed world is fighting tooth and nail to keep alive. And we, the people, turning to what the universe runs on, which is love and truth. It's that love and truth that we need to integrate inside of ourselves. And that'll lead us to where we need to go. Because what they're giving us out in the world engenders a lot of fear, a lot of anger, a lot of hatred. We don't want to go there. In brief moments, we need to be angry sometimes when things are not fair or unjust, but we don't want to stay there. And we certainly don't want fear to overtake us, because that just takes you into bad places. Then all the dark negative energies take over when you let fear take over inside of you. Trust in the universe. Trust that we're moving into this new age, no matter how dark it looks sometimes. Haven't each one of you gone through times in your life where a relationship ended, or a job ended, or someone died that you loved and you thought it was the end of the world, and there is no God, and losing trust and faith in everything? But then you stay with it, and life transforms, and you transform, and your sense of purpose gets even stronger than before. Your identity gets stronger than before. Your authentic self becomes stronger than before. You know that you're living in a more meaningful world again after you went through the darkest of times. Don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. This is part of the transformational process that we are in. So as we get into spiritual renaissance and make that what we are both fighting for again, you'll see more and more how all of us are in this together. spiritual renaissance, Age of Aquarius. Although I want to point out something to you now, because everyone I think kind of knows, but maybe doesn't. So over there, it looks like another room, doesn't it? But actually, it is a mirror that's here. And you can see me, the back of my head. I'm hitting the back of my head. You can see the back of my head there in the mirror. And then you see the yin yang symbol up there. So you're looking at a mirror. A lot of you know that already, but I just wanted to point that out. So where I started with today is we are in a new world, and each one of us is in our own new world. But sometimes it doesn't feel like that. It feels like we're in the old world. And for most people, when you feel you're in the old world still, even if you want to be in it, because it's a familiar place, it starts feeling not good. It's not good because we're not there anymore. We need to move into this new world inside ourselves. So when we were in the Bay Area, we went back to some of our old haunts. And a couple of times Deb and I would say, God, I wish, hey, isn't there a way we can move back here? You know, a lot of it was nostalgia too, because we had such wonderful times in the Bay Area. It's a beautiful place to be on many levels. And we would say, maybe we need to get back here. The wedding was in Carmel, California. You know, that's also very beautiful. Clint Eastwood done a lot of good work there in Carmel. And, you know, we said, let's go back here. And what happened? COVID hit then. We can't go back. You can't go back. We're only moving forward now. But sometimes it feels like we're in this transition and we're not in the old world and we're not fully in the new world anymore. That's changing. You're going to feel more and more a part of the new world, but you got to let yourself get in there. It may not be comfortable at first in the new world, but that's where we are. That's reality. And we're meant to be there. If you want to lead the meaningful life, you go with where reality is, not just where fantasy is. And the reality is good. The reality is we are moving into a new world. We are moving into a new paradigm. And each one of us is going to be in a stronger sense of purpose for our lives with the changes that we're moving through. So no, we couldn't go back. But yes, we did get COVID. Deb's still struggling with it a little bit. We'll talk to her later about that. I caught it maybe 4 or 5 days into being in the Bay Area. We certainly got it at a wedding, which, you know, anyone would tell you that's not where you go if you want to avoid COVID. But it's a wedding we wanted to go to, people we care about. We're getting married. Family surrounding them are people we care about. So we went, we got the COVID. I can tell you it wasn't that bad for me. It wasn't that bad for Deb either overall, I don't think. She'll tell you more when we talk with her. But for me, it started with a head cold. And then I had a fever, maybe like 100.5. I think it got up to 101 maybe. And I felt lethargic, heavy, sick. But then 2 days later, the fever went away. I didn't feel so sick anymore. And I think that pretty much, even though I didn't retest myself, I did test myself to have it. I felt like COVID was pretty much gone. And that's what it was. It was like a cold or a minor flu with a minor fever. That's pretty much what happened. But it changed a lot inside of me somehow too. And somehow I feel it's somewhere in me yet. And that was like, over a week, maybe 10 days ago that I first contracted the COVID in the Bay Area. So no going back, moving forward. Right now, we're in a dark moon. There's hardly any moon out there to see. And then on Tuesday, at the new moon, there still won't be any moon to see at the new moon. And that's your time to make your affirmations. That's the time to make your visualizations. That's the time to make your prayers. It's the time to do deep meditation at that new moon. That's the time of void, let's say, when it switches from that old cycle to the new cycle at the new moon. And it'll be at 7 degrees plus of Cancer. So normally what this time of year is when we have a new moon in Cancer is a time to kind of like settle in, nurture ourselves, take care of ourselves, hook up with family, and feel just cared for and nurtured. But this Jupiter in Aries that's going to be in there, so closely square, that new moon in Cancer. And Aries is much more about action, moving forward. And with the Jupiter in Aries, that's where Jupiter is about expansion. So that's where we're expanding. We're expanding in Aries energy, which is straightforward, direct movement forward. Straightforward, direct, frank ways of looking at things and talking about things. And it's got more force to it. Cancer brings the energies on in like this. Aries takes the energies out like that. So that's what's happening. So it's time to act more. But you also want to get some of that inner work done too, because it is Cancer, new moon, and Neptune's changing directions. Neptune, the Pisces planet. So again, you want some more inner connection, meditation, things like that. But at the same time, you're going to get a sense that things are moving forward. And in America, you're going to get a sense that things are moving forward when it comes to this culture war. Because what happened with the gun issue and what happened with Roe Wade, people are not sitting down for that. They're going to fight. They are fighting. That's going to continue. And then most importantly, what's happening at this January 6th insurrection investigations. That's really going to get Trump. It's going to come to a point where Trump is found unmistakably guilty of what? Of doing things against the United States of America. Of trying to throw out a legal election. And most importantly, his own vice president not fighting against the people that were screaming to hang him, to hurt him, because he wouldn't go through making it an illegal election. He wouldn't go through trying to get the votes illegally to change the results of the election. And as people see this, there'll be no direction to go, I don't believe, except to find him guilty. But at the same time, he's got loyal people that really don't care about the right and wrong of it from the way that I just explained it. They just know that he is their hero. He is their man. He is the person that keeps their way of wanting life to be, to continue. The paradigm that they live by, he represents, and they don't want anything to happen to him. They want him to be president again in 2024. And nothing else matters in between. So you know culture war is going to get much more intense. When you add the Roe versus Wade and you add the gun issue, you can see how intense the culture war is now. So what's going on in the United States? There's a Pluto return. We've talked about that before. Pluto in July 4th, 1776 was at 27 plus degrees of Capricorn. It's now back to 27 plus degrees Capricorn for the first time in United States history. It takes that long. It takes that long for Pluto to make its complete cycle. So individuals never have a Pluto return because they don't live 250 years. But states do. So here's a Pluto return. And what is Pluto in the United States chart? Pluto in the United States chart in its second house, and Capricorn in its second house. It is the military-industrial complex. It is the power of the empire that America has become. It is the economy. It is the military. It is the police. And all those things, you can see how much transformation they're going through. Now look at the economy. It's not just a coincidence that the Pluto return. I told you all when the Pluto return was going to happen, that our economy would transform in a big way, and so would the military world, military police world, and that's what's happening. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. The economy needs to be transformed into a more equitable one, not just in America, but all over the world. And the military that runs so much of the world needs to transform too. And what's happening in our world is the power structure is changing. Russia, China are building up their own strength in their part of the world. And they no longer want the United States to have such power in the world. We're not talking what's right and wrong now. We're talking about what's real. This is what's changing. The power structures of the world are changing. I don't even think the UN is going to stay long term. Something new is going to have to come to replace the United Nations, because the United Nations really doesn't bring the whole world together in the way we would want. And the people that are on the Security Council of the United Nations are all people with nuclear weapons and are rich, wealthy nations. That needs to change. We need to make it where it's equality all over the world. All nations have an equal voice. That's what's coming. So the United Nations, as it stands now, can't continue, in my estimation. We need a new world body, one that brings us all together. Remember, diversity within unity, diversity within unity, diversity within unity. What does that mean? It just doesn't mean about racism and LGBTQ issues, although those are certainly a part of it. It means that you as an individual, me as an individual, person across the street as an individual, the country over there as an individual, that religion there as an individual, all of these individualities need to be respected and honored, as long as they're not hurting anyone else or destroying anything on our earth. And from that place of individuality, we build oneness. In the past, oneness was built more with, if we're all the same, we can build oneness. We can build individuality, but it means we're all separate from one another in our individuality and our freedom. And now our individuality and our freedoms want to merge with other individualities and freedom to create a wholeness and a oneness on this earth that has never been done before. And right now, when you look out, that looks impossible. Look, there's wars going on. But those wars, just like we talked about before in your individual lives, when horrible things happened that led to a transformation, this is going to lead to a positive transformation. You need to believe that inside yourself, and you need to turn to the love and the truth inside yourself, regardless of what's going on outside yourself. We can all do it. It's not easy. It's not easy for me either, but it's something we all must do in order to transform ourselves and our world. And we will do it, and we are doing it. Well, I'm going to bring Deb on in a second here. So the Pluto return, I started talking about that. Pluto return, yes. That continues for a while. Let me give you some times where I think we need to look at as more turning points. This week's a turning point. Then we have an eclipse season coming up at the end of the year, October, November. Then in February, March 2023, another big turning point. We'll talk more about it as we get closer to that. And then February, March, is that what I said? 2023. And then June 2025 should be when a lot of what's going on now, a lot of the actions that are happening, a lot of the changes, we should be settling into something like in June 2025. What happens then? Jupiter squares Saturn. That's the first major connection between Jupiter and Saturn since they made conjunction on the winter solstice of 2020. So that will give us our first indication, approximately 5 years later, our first indication of where this new age is that started in 2020, winter solstice. So that'll be June of 2025. So those are some marking points for what's coming ahead. I want to make sure I've got everything. I just want to say this too, because I don't think we do this enough as parents. since it takes so much work to deprogram ourselves from what the culture programmed us as, and our families added to the programming because they're the kind of messengers from the culture. One of the most important things we can do with our kids, and this is not easy, teach them to think for themselves. Important. Teach them to think for themselves so that they can decide for themselves where right and wrong sit and what kind of paradigm they want to live within. Yeah, you got to teach them you don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to get thrown into a mental institution or into jail. But by the same token, you need to keep your individuality. You need to think for yourself and not get programmed by the world, by a corporation, by a cult, by your family, by anything. Think for yourself. Okay, I think we're just about ready to bring on the beautiful Deborah Knighton Tallarico. Deborah, give me a nod if you're ready to come on. I think that's a nod. Let's bring you on. There she is.
Hey there.
How you feeling?
Hi, everybody. Well, as you started to talk about, I'm still really recovering from COVID. So, yeah, it seems to have gone from my head into my abdomen. So, and I still have some congestion, but yeah, so I'm happy to be here. I'm glad it's on Zoom, so we don't have to worry about anyone catching it. But yeah, I'm definitely much better. But it was a trip to have this while we were traveling, and it was good to get back home. And
Oh God, we had to travel for 3 days to drive back from the Bay Area too. We took a little
Right.
extra time this time because we didn't feel so good, but
Right.
really great to get home.
Yeah. But I feel like this COVID definitely getting COVID definitely shifted my consciousness.
Say more about that. Say more about that.
So for me, it made me realize how, not that I don't think this anyway, but it made it it brought it home even more how important it is to simplify and live a more simple life. And I don't know, it made me think differently and about even more than I already did, that I make my choices in my life for the betterment of Mother Earth and all beings and all life. And I know sometimes, it got me to look at my own consumerism and, really only making choices that are serving, the evolution and the healing and restoration of our Earth. And I just really, really, that I really started thinking about that a lot. And more, I guess, commitment to doing what I came here to do on the earth. And also an awareness of wanting to unplug from the mainstream, from, I don't know, just unplugging from the patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book called that, Unplug the Patriarchy, because it can be pretty intense seeing some of the things that are going on in our world right now, and to have hope. For me, my hope is the new earth, the new age that we're in, and knowing even though whatever I see outside is going on right now, which is a lot of intense things going on in our world, that holding that greater vision, like you talk about all the time, holding that greater vision that we are moving into a new world. It's like a birthing. We're birthing into this new world. We're in the birthing process. And as we all know, birthing is not an easy process, right?
Right.
Yeah. As the baby is painful, as the mother is painful. And, it's intense. And it's also amazing and wonderful when there's that new birth. So we're really in that transition, and to really trust that, even in moments when it's challenging, when we look at the world and our the climate and environment and Mother Earth and what's happening in that regard, and just in humanity, all the conflicts. How are we going to come into that oneness? Really wondering about that. How are we going to do that and it all goes back to our consciousness, right? And more and more of us waking up, and that whole theory that when there's enough of us that have reached that, what I would call the Christ Magdalene consciousness, that consciousness of love, and really being in that consciousness of oneness, unity consciousness, there's a tipping point. And once we reach that tipping point where there's enough people that have gotten to that level of consciousness, it will help tip the whole planet and the rest of humanity. And
that's where the 144,000 comes in. A lot of people believe that that's the tipping point, right?
Exactly. And I just happened to, for the last year or two, look at the clock at 1:44 and 11:44, like every single day. And the room, I think one of the rooms we stayed in Mill Valley was room 144.
It was actually, that's right.
So right. I'm constantly reminded every day of the reality of, we have to reach a tipping point, and, each one of us matters, and each one of us going into that higher consciousness of love and peace and harmony, and also truth and wisdom. And, the more and more of us that can go into that state of consciousness and live from that place with compassion for all beings, even those that are hard to have compassion for, and those beings that don't think like we do, exactly. And to reach that, like, I guess you could say Buddha, Kuan Yin, Christ Magdalene consciousness. I mean, that's one way that I have to describe it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you're reaching a certain expansion of your consciousness. And
this is so difficult, that. I know that's what you're starting to say. It's like so difficult. When you think of people that are, I don't want to bring it into politics, but when you take a look at the insurrection investigations that are going on, and you look at some of the things that were done by people to overthrow our capital like that, with all that violence, it's so difficult sometimes to say, I want to understand them. I want to have empathy for their position. But I'm feeling like, how can you possibly think that way? How can you feel that way?
Yeah. And I think
get the empathy piece in there.
Yeah. And I think it's the seeing it from that place of compassion, and also seeing it as everything in our world is like a dream, and everything in our world is a reflection. And somehow that insurrection was part of the whole process of the dismantling.
Right, exactly.
Of our, industrial complex, military industrial complex, and that, that to see it that way, to see that they were players like in a dream,
right,
that were part of the shift. Right. Even that somehow is part of the shift.
Well, when you look back and you see the Civil War, the old Civil War, right? It's like, and people had slaves, and it's so difficult to like understand that.
Yeah.
But yet the best way I can understand that is like, if you're brought up a certain way, then you're taught that these are the values that you need to live by, right? Like some people are brought up in communities where, they hunt. Other people can't believe they would never shoot an animal. But if you're brought up in that culture, it's like, that's all you know. So if you're brought up in a culture that they have slaves to help them run the plantations, as wrong as you and I know that is, the people there didn't wake up to anything beyond how they were brought up. That's what I meant when I said before, you got to move beyond the programming from your families and your culture in order to truly help change the world. Because if you only are going along with how you were programmed, and even us, we had things that we were programmed to be and to think that we had to work our way through, right? So that's how I get my compassion, is saying that's how they were brought up and they don't know any better. It's almost like ignorance.
Yeah. And as you're talking about that, what I kept thinking was, it's all really goes back to connection to ourself, our higher self, to the earth, and to something greater, God source, goddess source, and our own hearts and souls.
Yes.
And I think that people that, like, for example, slavery is what you brought up, people who enslave other people, there's something inside of them. I don't know. Not to go into a place of judgment, but are they really in their heart, in a place of compassion and love? When I'm in my heart in a place of compassion and love, there's no way that I could ever enslave another person.
Right.
There's no way I could do a certain act. So I think that really part of the healing is our reconnection with our heart, with our soul, with that greater source, and our earth.
And that's where empathy and compassion come from, exactly the place you're saying, right?
Yes. And to remember that all life is sacred. And I think that's what is really needed on our planet, is to remember that, and to realize that everything is sacred on the earth. You have to value your own self as sacred.
Good point.
And how many people actually truly value themselves as sacred?
That's right.
And as an emanation, as a facet of the divine. We have to go back to our divine nature. It's and the balance of the divine and human nature.
Exactly.
What I think what's happened is things went so to the human side.
Yeah.
That we lost, and we got disconnected from the divine. And astrology, the stars, the planets, the earth, it all helps us connect, right? And
Yes.
remember that we're part of something greater, and that there's something, we're divine. So the more and more people that can remember that we are divine, that I am divine, you are divine, I'm sacred, you're sacred, life is sacred. Life is, so many people have gotten disconnected from seeing and feeling that everything is sacred
and meaningful
and sacred. And so
you and I were talking the other day about how in a lot of ways the sky unites us. Just, I think that's what you were starting to say. But like, if there's a full moon right now, that full moon, even if you can't see it everywhere around the earth, that full moon exists everywhere on the earth that day at that time.
Yes,
it does unite us. That sky is a way of uniting everybody.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So since we're starting to talk about that more, I just wanted to add on to what you were talking about astrologically, and encourage everybody to look into the early morning sky if you can get up before dawn, because tomorrow morning, actually right after midnight tonight, Venus and the moon will be conjuncting each other, which in my work with in my studies I've been doing with Venus alchemy, it's a class I've been in for the last few years, is we're working with the 19-month synodic cycle of Venus and how it's connected to the journey that Inanna took, because Inanna was also Venus. They were the one and the same, Venus, Inanna, and it's all connected to the cycle of Venus and the descent to the underworld, and then being in the underworld and facing your shadow, and then the ascent from the underworld. We're right now in that cycle of Venus. So interesting that tonight, just after midnight, when Venus and the moon conjunct at 3 degrees of Gemini, it brings in the sacral chakra gateway in the descent of Inanna. So it's the waning crescent moon,
Yes.
conjuncting Venus in the morning sky. So it's the morning star Venus. So the morning star Venus is the time of the descent of Inanna. So magical that this is happening right before the new moon in Cancer, because we know Cancer has so much to do with the womb,
and the great feminine,
the moon, the mother, the great mother,
yes.
the moon, the tides of the ocean. And just after what just happened with Roe versus Wade and women's reproductive rights and things like that,
yes.
it's so fascinating that we're in that, we're entering that gateway. And I just want to, bring people's awareness into that, of course, women may feel it more because we actually have wombs, but we all have sacral chakras. It's the sacral chakra gateway. And it's that place of birthing new life and new projects and new creations. It's, it's a place of abundance, our sacral chakra. And so right now at this gateway, since it's in the descent time and the dark of the moon, it's not after the new moon, it's before the new moon. In the dark of the moon, it's really the time for clearing any wounds that are held in our sacral chakras, old emotions, old relationships that we still hold in our sacral chakras, because that's where a lot of emotions get, focused. And whether you're a man or a woman, a lot of times those old relationships are there, still lingering somehow. So this month, this gateway and this lunar cycle of Cancer is a really perfect time to do as much purification and clearing as you can in your sacral chakra.
This is important, I think, also because I think you're kind of alluding to it, but that's where we have our bad connections, our codependent connections with people too, is from that sacral chakra. So
that's right.
Sometimes we'll hang on to a relationship in the past because of that codependence that we had with that person, and we don't even know it.
Yes.
So this time is a good time for clearing that, right?
Exactly. And I just did a meditation yesterday that I found on YouTube, and it was about, it was more for women, but the womb being like a room. But you could look at your sacral chakra as a man, and who are the people that are still in there in your sacral chakra that you didn't have a completion with, or that need to be released, like an old relationship. Because, whenever we've been, sexual or emotionally connected, emotionally intimate with someone, that energy can be held in our sacral chakras.
Yeah.
So it's a time to really be aware of that.
And that's where the cord was when we first were born, right? That umbilical cord. So that's
right near there.
In that place.
Right near there. That's right. So this month ahead is a really perfectly divinely aligned time to do that deeper work on our sacral chakras and clearing old programming there, old wounds. I mean, sexual abuse, all those kinds of things are stored in that area.
Yeah.
Times we've not honored ourselves as sacred through our sexuality, all those kinds of things, any times we've been violated or violated anyone. So all those energies are held there. And that area has, it's also, memories of birthing, for many women. I mean, I've become aware over the last 5 or 6 years through my own clients how many women have had very traumatic births and emergency C-sections, and that's all held in our sacral chakra. And also and it's also its connection ancestrally too, our connection to our lineages, I think, in our sacral chakra a lot too. So our mother lineage, our our lineages are much in that chakra too. So
let's see this. it's a little off course, but not totally. Inanna and Persephone, are they? Is there a connection between them? Are they the same? Are they the same uh, person? I mean, because Persephone got taken underground by Pluto, right? That's the myth
No.
of Persephone. Tell, tell,
Yeah.
me- tell me about that.
Yeah. No, to me, that's a very different archetypal journey
Hmm.
because Inanna makes a choice to go to the underworld to visit her dark sister. And so she chooses to go and she relinquishes parts of her old identity so she can go to the underworld and then get reborn
Choose.
again.
He
Yes.
chooses.
Yes. And although Inanna still has to send someone back to the underworld after she goes there, just like Persephone. But with Persephone, it's also connected with, I think, a lot the mother-daughter relationship because, she's abducted, although some people believe that she wasn't abducted, but she was abducted in her like maiden innocent state. And she had a separation from her mother, and her mother grieved deeply, like just and the earth became barren
Demeter.
because her mother, yeah, Demeter was just grieving. So it's a
Yeah.
different archetypal theme because I think that's more the mother daughter relationship where Inanna is, the it's actually releasing the old and coming into your sovereignty and releasing. So, because Inanna goes to the underworld and then she returns and she's crowned the queen of the upper and the lower worlds. And she needs that wisdom, though, to truly be in her sovereignty. She needs the wisdom of the descent. She needs the wisdom of going in and facing her shadow side, her dark sister, her
Yeah.
own, unconscious.
About
And,
Ereshkigal, was that the name of the?
yes, Ereshkigal. And then, dying to her old self, letting her old ego self die so she can be reborn again. So she gains a lot of wisdom through that journey as she's stripped naked going down into the underworld, in the underworld. And then she comes back and she reclaims her powers. She reclaims, but she has a wisdom that she couldn't have gained if she hadn't taken that descent.
So this is really important for the transformational process, not just for women, but for men too, to be taken to their underworld and to face their shadows so that they can come back up and transform in a way that
Exactly.
brings them to a new place in their lives and in themselves.
Exactly.
Wow,
That's totally right.
hmm.
That's right.
It's important now to think about, isn't it? In our
Yes.
transformational process right now, that we have
Yes.
to release and let go that which isn't right for us anymore, and our own shadows and things like that, so that we can go to our whole new level, which all of us are going through on some level now with all that's going on.
Exactly. And you could look at this transition into the new earth and everything in that way. Like we're descending and we're unplugging from the old patriarchal paradigm as we descend, and then we're naked and we're in the unknown, in the darkness, and we have to face all the different shadows inside of us, our fears. But then we reclaim and we bring in this new energy.
Yes. Do you
Yeah.
have a short meditation for us today that you can lead us to before we leave today?
So I just want us to, I'll do a short meditation because we don't have much time.
Let me
Just
say
for
before
us.
you get into that, because we may not have time after you're done, but we'll be back 2 weeks from today. So what's that? The 9th, 10th, 9th of July. We'll be back for our next show. Just want to let everybody know that.
And that'll be right before the full moon.
Exactly.
Right
Yes.
before the full moon. And also, just in case we go to the very end, you can always reach Leo on his website, leoknightontallarico.com. And my website is Gaia Sophia templeoftheheart.com. And soon we're going to have the rebirth of our Spiritual Renaissance website,
Yes,
which is not operating right now. So, but that will be up again in its new rebirth state. It seems like we're all in some kind of rebirth process.
exactly.
So I just want to remind everyone to look into the sky tomorrow morning and Monday morning, if you can, before dawn, to look and see that connection, the energies of Moon and Venus join together. And also the Pleiades will be conjunct that, even though we might not probably be able to see that. That energy of the Pleiades will be influencing that gateway, which is that. So the seven sisters of the Pleiades, the Pleiadian mothers, they bring in a lot of divine feminine energy. So there's a lot of divine feminine energy coming in.
That's going to help a lot of women now who have a lot to say around what's been happening in their world lately that they're not happy about.
And to reclaim our wombs and our own reproductive energies in a much more conscious way, and to heal all the wounds. So this is a very powerful time right now. So let us just take a moment to just close our eyes and just become aware of your sacral chakra. For a woman, where her womb was or is, and for a man, right below our navels is our sacral chakra. And just tuning in and breathing into that chakra, which is that place of birthing, that place of our emotions, where our emotions are held, memories of relationships. And let us just bring in an orange light, which is the color of the sacral chakra, a very clear or like carnelian colored orange light to fill that chakra, to bring healing to any old relationships, old emotions, and just feeling your connection with the womb of the earth, because Mother Earth has a womb. And you might imagine your sacral chakra connected to the womb of Mother Earth. And just feeling that Cancerian womb energy, that energy of the Great Mother that holds and contains and nourishes and nurtures all life. And just know during this lunar cycle and at this gateway that you can connect with that womb of the mother whenever you need to feel that nurturing energy. And there's also a cosmic womb, the goddess Nut, who is the mother of Isis and Osiris, that she holds this great cosmic womb, just like there is the galactic center of our universe where all the stars are birthed from. That's a cosmic womb that we can also connect to in the sky. And just taking a moment to feel and become aware of that great cosmic womb, that galactic center of our universe. And know that you can connect with this cosmic womb to be held and nurtured and be brought into that place of the void where all things are birthed forth from. And just feeling that energy of the great womb, the dark womb where all life sparks from. And I know we've just reached our ending.
Yes.
So we thank you all so much. And may you feel connected to the great Earth Mother and great cosmic womb of our universe.
For those that can still hear us, you can get a hold of me at solus@aol.com. Besides, it's leoknightontallarico.com. And Deborah, say again where people can get a hold of you.
At Elelia, which is my spiritual name, Elelia, Elelia, at Gaia Sophia, templeoftheheart.com. Thanks you all so much. All our love and many blessings.
Talk to you in a couple of weeks. Take care, everybody.